Okay, so we're going to get started. I know folks are still trickling in a little bit, but we're excited you guys are all here with us today. This is Union Co-ops 101, and I'm Ellen Vera. I'm one of the co-founders of CoOp Cincinnati, and I'm excited. We've got a whole great group of folks who are going to share with everyone today. So we're going to pull it up. I know we've had a few speakers that are having a little bit of trouble getting in, so we might have to play it by ear a little bit and maybe shuffle around the order a little bit. But we will get started here. So okay. So you guys are in the Union Co-ops and Networks 101 session. Today we have folks from CoOp Cincinnati, myself and Cynthia Pinchback-Hines, who are a racial justice educator and developer. We're hoping that you're going to be hearing from Amaha and Sherelle from CoOp Dayton. They are having a little trouble getting into the session, so hopefully that'll get worked out here. But they're wonderful, and they're going to share with you a whole lot of stuff about kind of their organizing in Dayton. Amaha is the co-executive director, and Sherelle is the program director there. And then we also have with us today Johnny Sopot. I'm going to say your last name wrong, so I'm going to let you say it. But anyways, we have Johnny here. He's with the Union Co-op Initiative in Vancouver, and he is also the president of his union. So we've got some really exciting folks with us today. Okay, so before we kind of go into kind of laying the groundwork, we want to talk a little bit about the vision, about kind of what has gotten all of this started for all of our three groups, at least a piece of it, and how important that is into kind of laying the groundwork to really start to building really thriving union co-op networks and union co-ops themselves. So all of us kind of go back to at least kind of what got us started, got us excited was that agreement that Mondragon International made with the steelworkers in 2009, saying that they wanted to launch these union co-ops in the US, in North America, and around the world. And for us, that was one of the first, we were one of the first to bring that to life. But that was definitely something that was very important and kind of laying the groundwork to get started. We're going to talk a little bit about how do you lay that foundation? How do you get started and kind of do that community and labor organizing to really build a good base? And I'm wondering if folks from CoOp Dayton are in the room now and are ready to talk about this part. Because I can't see you now since I'm presenting.
Hi, greetings. Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm here. Hi, greetings. My name is Amaha Selassie from CoOp Dayton. I apologize. I had an emergency happen just a little bit ago. So CoOp. Let me give you a little background. So CoOp Dayton was founded really out of the need for a grocery store. So there was an area that didn't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, which we term as a food desert. We have 40,000 residents and no full-service grocery store. And so the community came together, including the union, i.e. IUE CWA, to see like what we could do together to meet this need. And so we started doing surveys. We started actually we reached out to CoOp Cincinnati at the same time, and we learned about the Mondragon model, and we started building interest in the community, or how to leverage the interest that was already there. And we received some seed money early on by the union to help make this happen, because at the beginning we had no budget or anything, but we had one of our members who was actually a lawyer at the time. She was given I want to say it was about 20 hours a week to dedicate towards building this project. And I think what I would want to stress is the key of participation. So throughout the whole process, the community had input and had, oh, you can't hear me? Can you guys hear me or no? Okay, you can hear me? Okay.
I can hear you. I'm hoping.
I saw something in the chat. I was like, oh, dang, I'm talking the whole time. Okay. Participation, I think, is the key. So throughout the whole process, the community had active ways to decide as far as even the naming of the market, our mission statements, our architectural design when we got to that phase. So right now we're a 15,000 square foot grocery store with about 8,000 that's retail, and we also have a community kitchen, health clinic, and a community room. And I think participation is the key because, if we're trying to build power, to me, power is connected to hope. And the more that we have hope that change is possible, the more that we are able to put our gifts and talents towards it. We're willing to act towards it, the more we realize our agency. So I think participation is a key way for the community to realize its agency and its power. And the union played a crucial role not only in helping fund some of our initial seed money. I want to say they were our first donation. They also we had some volunteers that helped with distributing the survey. That we went to bus stops and laundromats, and we went everywhere to create an initial survey to see if people were interested. And they also had a seat on our steering committee at the time when we had about a 19 people steering committee of community, labor, and city and regional government. We're all together at the room because the table that was created was one that, as we move forward, we knew within that circle, it was about 19 people, which might be a little bit too big, but we knew we could touch everybody at that time. And Ellen also played a crucial role at the beginning, right? Helping us connect some dots and learning, because we were all new, other than probably Leela, we were all new to how to do this. I don't know. Cheryl, do you have anything? I know you hopped in late, but we had trouble getting in.
Yeah, you covered a lot of it. I'll just ask if we continue to have relationships with IUECWA. They serve on the CoOp Dayton board now. They continue to give funding, and we're developing curriculum around union co-ops in partnership with them to incorporate in worker owner training for all of our co-ops who have worker classes. So yeah, they continue to be a big part of the vision of CoOp Dayton in supporting us and incubating cooperatives throughout the region.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, so the market, we have 5,000 members right now, a little bit over that. And we're still in a process of transitioning as far as, because we're using the Modular model, so we're community owned and worker owned. And so we're still developing that worker piece. And then I want to say in an early next year is when the workers will decide about forming a union. And so that's happening like in the first quarter of next year. And right now they're not owners yet either. So we have a year waiting period before they can become an owner. So we opened up in May. So everything kind of happening at one time.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, Amaha and Sherelle. These guys are just some dynamic organizers that have brought such an amazing movement to life in Dayton. And I think, one of the things that has been so crucial about really laying that foundation to start building these thriving union worker co-ops is to build meaning and deep relationships with your labor movement. So I know sometimes we've had people come to us and say, well, they just aren't interested. Or like, I've reached out to them once or twice and they just didn't respond or things like that. And I think one thing that's really important is that, we have to recognize that we are a part of the labor movement as well, right? And so that means we are also need to be a part of their fights, about the things that they're working towards, and that it's a reciprocal relationship, that these are, things that we can't just go to people once or twice. This is oftentimes a foreign concept. And so doing the work to be a part of your local community, Central Labor Council, and, building relationships with the reps and the members that are within those unions is important. Kind of that So when you're ready to start doing those co-ops, you've really, built those deep relationships so that it doesn't feel like something just like transactional. You're just going to say, hey, we want resources or money or something like that. So awesome.
that's a real good point, because actually I would argue that like our relationship, probably the community's relationship with the unions, it really like around John Crawford, like someone that was killed here at a Walmart in 0.2 seconds, and it really outraged the community, and unions stood strong with the community during that time. And so we were meeting for years actually before we built the market. So we already had a deep relationship, and so it kind of just went to a next level when this need arose, and I think everybody realized it. So yeah, that's a good point, that we didn't just pop up one day. It was developing relationship for a long time, and a lot of community came out for when Walmart, the Walmart out here, we were protesting to get it unionized back in the day. So yeah, so I remember. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Now I'm going to turn it over to Johnny to really talk about actually starting the businesses. So once you've laid that groundwork, once you've built those relationships, like for example, in Cincinnati, we had, union organizers and union presidents that were part of the initial push to form these co-ops. We used that vision, right, of that agreement with the steelworkers that Mondragon made, and really talked to what the vision of what Mondragon's been able to do, right? Because a lot of times when you're addressing these unions, they want to know really can scale. Like they're not necessarily excited about one small co-op. They're excited about the scale, right? Because that they're working with, hundreds of thousands of workers. And so they want to know that that is possible. So I think starting there and laying that foundation can really help you when you're getting ready to then start the actual businesses themselves. So that I'm going to bring up the slides one more time and turn over to Johnny. Johnny, do you want to introduce yourself first, and then talk to us about kind of that process of what's worked, what have you learned when starting up these union co-op businesses?
Sure. Thanks very much, Ellen. So nice to see everyone. I guess I can't see you all, but nice to join you all. My name is Johnny Sopachuk. It's a weird Ukrainian pronunciation name that no one ever gets right, even within my own family. I'm third generation settler here in Vancouver, BC, and want to start by acknowledging that I'm calling in from Burnaby, British Columbia, which is the ancestral and unceded homelands of the Hunkaminam and Squamish-speaking peoples. And in Canada, it's a really important part of our work to acknowledge the land we're on, but to recommit ourselves to ongoing reconciliation towards the ongoing colonial genocide that our governments and country are continuing to perpetuate. I'll start this off. I use he, him pronouns as well. I'm approach this work as a labor union organizer. I've been organizing for about 15 years with a variety of labor unions. I currently serve as the president of the Arts and Cultural Workers Union, which is a new organizing initiative of IATSE. And IATSE is about 150,000 member union representing arts workers and entertainment workers in primarily film and theater and visual arts here in Vancouver. Our process of creating a unionized co-op was a long one. We spent about 2 years in development, and we're lucky to get some government funding from the BC Arts Council, which allowed us to look at different cooperative structures and systems, collectives and unions. And our members, our founding members, about 17 of us, formed Value Co-op, which is the Vancouver Artists Labor Union Cooperative. Our members produce your typical like campaign materials, buttons, swag, campaign materials to try and bridge the gap between labor unions and artists. Our co-op has grown over the past 2 years. We have about 30 active members who work, some in full-time or full part-time jobs, and others in more collaborator roles. Value Co-op has really been an incubator, which has started a new other co-op. So similar to a Mondragon approach, when the pandemic hit, our business model at Value had to change. There was less a need for convention meeting swag and in-person materials to pandemic-related materials. So our members at Value Co-op helped launch a secondary co-op where we worked with out-of-work costume shop professionals from the theater industry, who then created a cooperative, a sewing co-op, and they started creating masks. And our members have probably done about 10,000 masks right here in Vancouver, where they're all making living wages, and many of them much more. And that was their first source of income throughout the pandemic until government supports kicked in. So to Ellen's point around, or question around, some of the lessons learned around creating our co-ops and working with unions, this movement has brought a group of individuals together to create a very similar organization to CoOp Cincinnati. And we're really inspired by the work that is happening on the ground there through the steelworkers, Mondragon, Ellen, Kristen, and the rest of the team. So we actually just 2 weeks ago received our incorporation for the new Union Cooperative Initiative, which is a similar network ecosystem builder, helping to create a solidarity economy here in Vancouver, British Columbia, and beyond. We have been founded by 3 major labor unions who have looked at Value Co-op as essentially a test case model for expanding membership initiatives. I put on my union organizer hat, and we've seen pretty substantial growth in IATSE and the Arts and Cultural Workers Union through Value. We've been able to organize 5 non-union arts nonprofits who have come to the union movement because they've seen the work we've done at Value. And we've seen other unions like the United Food and Commercial Workers, Move Up, which is an office professional technical employees union, and United Steelworkers, looking at that model to say, hey, could we use unionized cooperatives as a way to support our workers for, say, for example, in the cleaning industries to help improve their lives and improve their workplaces. So we formed this network. We have formed in Canada, we have provincial or statewide cooperative legislation. So we formed as a nonprofit multi-stakeholder cooperative. So that means there's different forms of membership where unions can be members, individuals can be members, and we can have outside members within our co-op. So our network is a cooperative, it's a nonprofit, it's very similarly shared, structured to CoOp Cincinnati as a place for us to meet, collaborate, and then to start proactively looking at different workplaces, sectors, and geographic areas that we can help form co-ops by identifying spaces for cooperatives, so opportunities, but also by identifying workers who have the skills and expertise to run their working lives, but may not have access to the capital or the technical expertise to start their own businesses. I just saw in the chat specifically the question around what is a union co-op, and I can answer that in values context. So when we were forming Value Co-op, we very early on decided we wanted to be a unionized co-op. One, it was an articulation of our political beliefs. We may be opening up a business, but we're still workers and we're still working people. So we formed both a cooperative and a union, and eventually aligned with IATSE as the Arts and Cultural Workers Union. So our union is the space where we negotiate a collective agreement. We built one with ourselves, which sets minimum pay standards, working hours, benefits, and the union also helps us navigate conflict within the co-op. We're a fairly large co-op of about 30 people. We have monthly general assemblies and working groups, which take on the day-to-day work of the co-op. But there is, regardless of how great all of the members are, there's still conflict. There's still challenges, and often our members and myself included, we put our co-op hat on first because we're looking out for the needs of the business, the operations, which sustains us, and the union's there to help us navigate navigate conflict, and to make sure we're looking out and after each other as workers, but also expansively looking out into the community to change working conditions for arts and cultural workers across Vancouver, Metro Vancouver. And in other contexts, the union is helping to provide some of our co-ops. So we're currently in the process of incubating or starting up 3 new cooperatives. And our union partners are coming to the table and providing financing and granting as well to help those workers create their cooperatives. So I'll leave it like that. Otherwise, I'm going to just keep rambling.
Thank you so much, Johnny. That was very helpful. I mean, just, a co-op that in which the workers are also a part of the union. They're a member of a union. They have a collective bargaining agreement. This is very similar to what's gone on within some of the very successful co-ops, such as, the Mondragon co-ops who have the social council that pretty much acts like a union. But it's that place within the co-op in which people are wearing that worker and saying, what is it like to be a worker in here? How are we making sure that our wages, our benefits, our working conditions are all in line with our values? And how do we make sure we have a space in which we can really work through our conflicts as human beings, right? We know that's going to arise. And so having a dedicated space and a dedicated process to dealing with that and dealing with the issues right around democracy, right? Even though we have democracy doesn't mean that we're not going to sometimes do things that may oppress minority or something like that. So it's being a reinforcing structure about living out our values within our co-ops. And one of the largest co-op in the United States also has as part of it, CHCA, the Cooperative Home Healthcare Associates, with over 2,300 workers. They found that really important to unionize and be a part of the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union. So now we're going to kind of get into the nitty gritty of starting those businesses. So I'm going to share my screen again here. Give me one. Wait, I think I'm doing it the wrong way. You guys are going to be seeing a thing of mirrors. Yeah. Don't. Cynthia here. Okay, let me try that again. Sorry, guys. No problem. Okay, it's coming together. There we go. So I'm going to lay the foundation, and then Cynthia is going to kind of go through some of the nuts and bolts about how we do this. So in terms of really getting ready to start that business, we think it's really important to be thoughtful about the industry and the approach that you're going to start with. So especially if you have labor partners that you're really, could really get right what you're doing and want to be a part of this, it would be probably important to then really think about the industries that they're in, right? So in Cincinnati, we had some really deep relationships with the steelworkers, with the building trades unions, and with the United Commercial. And so those were the areas that we said, okay, we're going to start co-ops in these sectors because we really want to really reinforce those relationships and bring these types of businesses to life. The other thing to think about is that, are you going to be looking at startups or are you going to be looking at conversions, converting existing businesses to worker ownership? I think that there's definitely reasons to do both. One of the arguments I would say for conversions sometimes is that you can be, transitioning existing businesses that have, probably a lot more workers, which may be exciting to your unions. And they may be able to help you identify some of those places. And so partnerships can take on work. Definitely once that business is up and running, the representation, providing benefits. So getting access to some really great health and welfare funds that they couldn't get access otherwise. But it could be that, your union trying to, and if you could, kind of help and transition an existing business within that sector, that could help them start to build a base from. So we, for example, worked in the childcare sector with our teachers union here locally. And, part of the campaign, in addition to organizing unorganized childcare workers, it was, can we take some of these existing businesses and transition them to worker ownership? And then, kind of formulate there from that. There's lots of different ways, sometimes providing staff or resources. Like I said, kind of being that early warning network of businesses that maybe that owner's not investing anymore in the company, or they're starting to get older, look for, maybe a way to sell. Could be a good opportunity to keep that, that this union, not to have an outside buyer that's going to get rid of the union or is going to close that business down. And we've also had a lot of good luck with having unions on our boards of different initiatives or the nonprofit itself. So with that, okay, so one more thing one of the things that's most important as you're kind of getting ready for this is who is your team? That's the most important key to success. You could have the best idea in the world, you could have all the resources, but if you don't have the right team of folks, they're not going to get very far. So having that grit, passion, the flexibility, having people who have industry experience, but it's also really important to have a good attitude and have the values. And a lot of times you can teach skill, but you can't teach this piece as easily. It takes a lot more time. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Cynthia Pinchback-Hines, who's going to talk a little bit about our process, about how we go from once we've laid that foundation to really starting to build out, that co-op. And so take it over.
All right. How's everyone doing? Great. I can't hear anyone, but I suppose that this afternoon you're doing quite well. Just as Ellen mentioned, I'm going to share with you information about the step-by-step process that we call CoOp what we to be the foundation by which we understand how to create co-ops, to develop our co-ops. CoOp U is an intensive 3-month training, and it takes about 14 weeks for a process. From beginning to end, I say from nuts to everything that you want to think about in terms of what it takes to go into creating a co-op. But again, it helps the teams develop union worker-owned businesses. And we use the process, the lean startup process, whereby we have shorter cycles that we use in order to develop the co-ops. We also incorporate insights and practices utilized in the Sayong, which is the Mondragon's premier cooperative incubator. We include here the trainings. We do trainings typically the same day every week for the 14 weeks. The participants are definitely accustomed to a regimen. The 1 week one throughout the training, and then even following the training, as well as support with financial and financing. And then follow that, we have support, as I said before, with the various co-ops. This particular case you see, or what you see in front of you now, is Power in Numbers, Black Co-op U. I happen to co-facilitate this with Kristen Barker, and we developed this program as a way of providing context from a perspective, an African-American perspective, contextually. And what we've done for the first cohort, which took place earlier this year, we started back in April, and we completed the first session in July, 14 weeks. At the very end of that session, we had a pitch competition, and the competition actually presented one winner, but they were all winners in our eyes because they all did a fantastic job. Every one of the co-ops came out with their articles of incorporation. They were set because of the 14 weeks training that led to their completion. So with Black Co-op U, again, Power in Numbers, it says here you start your Black-owned cooperative in Cincinnati. We have our second cohort that is now in progress, and it's scheduled to be completed in January of 2022. Okay, so once the co-op is formed, as it says here, once we're formed, we provide support, we provide services We have ongoing education. We do have the connections with the various associations and our networks. We make sure that our co-ops are provided with that information. We have a total of 12 co-ops at CoOp Cincinnati and organizations. And as you can see, that we provide to the various businesses. The services would include the transitions to membership. We also have in there our loan funds and support for our co-ops. Okay, so we are looking at all the different co-ops right now. We have Shine that's in front of you right now. Shine is our child nature, or child, excuse me, I'm looking at a different set of slides.
I can go back to the first.
No, that's okay. Okay.
We're mostly just kind of trying to give people a flavor of
familiar with each
which
one of them.
co-ops are unionized, which unions.
I'm sorry, I actually dropped my glasses. That's why I am just sitting here. I cannot see.
There we go.
There we are. All right. So again, organizations. You've already seen Shine, the Nurture Center with a clean co-op. Sustainigy, of course, is our energy efficiency co-op. We have our Harvest, which was the very first one. It's our food co-op. And then we see the other labor partners as well, our union affiliates, and they're extremely important to our partnership. And then we look at our foundational structure again. How we build the business, balancing the ideals and financial stability, sustainability. Be careful with projections of the amount of the debt the co-op can sustain. So we have conversations. We provide the co-ops with resources that will also be at their disposal. And financial literacy and business literacy with co-op teams is critically important. And that's a big part of our discussion, as well as laying the union groundwork, as Ellen mentioned. Union neutrality, card check as a part of bylaws, education on labor history and labor co-op history, facilitating the meetings between the co-ops and unions. And we also lead a union steward within the network. All right. So building the culture itself. Building the co-op culture and solidarity, of course, is critically important. Going back to our Mondragon principles, we have the regular team meetings. We also have co-op management meetings of our co-ops. We have retreats with our co-ops as well as our making sure that there is a co-op Cincinnati board seat on each one of our cooperatives. Our team meetings start with personalized check-ins. We have time that applies to the co-op as well. We discuss topics, communication and financial literacy. What is a Mondragon movement and the co-op movement. And as I said earlier, we meet regularly as well. We have our co-op manual process. Manual, we do our own workbook. It's a guide. We use the workbook along with the trainings that we do. Here are some of the chapters. As you can see, the co-ops, Mondragon, labor, all the important things that we think would go into the making of a successful cooperative.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. So I'm just going to give you guys a little bit, since part of us understanding here today is like kind of what is a union co-op, how does it work, just a little bit of a flavor of some of the things that can be found in our co-op culture curriculum, the Work-Runner workbook. But some of the questions we often get is why union co-op? why, if this is a democratic organization, if these workers are owning the business, why do we even need a union, right? I'm sure some of you guys on here today are asking that question or have asked it. But these are some of the things you guys have probably kind of seen this woven throughout, but these are some of the things that we help people understand as we're, as they're joining our co-ops. But it's about that solidarity, right? It's about scaling with our values intact. As our co-ops get larger, it can be a lot harder to do that. And by having collective bargaining, it really leads to clear expectations, clear human resource policies, just really making sure that we are, again, putting in these reinforcing systems to live out our values. Again, balancing those democratic work environment. We've all seen times where, you've got a majority within that co-op that want to do a certain thing or want to go a certain way. And that can sometimes oppress, the smaller groups of folks within the co-op. And so it's just having that balance. And at the same time, not always everybody within a co-op is an actual worker owner. And so you still want to have representation for the workers who are in that co-op, but aren't necessarily owners yet. We already talked about the access to improved and affordable benefits such as healthcare, eventually pension and things like that. And then, broader movement wise, is that, one of the things that as, a co-op business, we are not able to necessarily change what's going on within the industry on our own. And so we want to pay as much as we can. We want to have the best job that we can. But because, we're operating in already an existing industry that has certain standards, we can only do so much. So we might be able to, not have the CEO that's making 300, 400, 500 times what that entry-level employee is making, but we are not going to be able to change things so drastically that people are going to be able to make a whole lot more if we don't improve the conditions in the industry. And that is what being part of a larger labor movement is allowing us to do, is to work in that way. And so again, acting in solidarity and being able to push for other types of policy and advocacy things in terms of making our world, our community a better place. So those are some of the things that we help teach as we're trying to get our co-ops ready to unionize. In terms of forming the union itself, once our co-ops are formed, we usually don't kind of have them start to unionize until they have at least 3 workers, so that we start education around it. But usually it takes 3 workers, at least. You have to have at least somebody who's kind of acting as the boss or that they negotiate with. So could do board, and then they choose the labor partner for them. Often our co-ops are trying to unionize the labor partner that's in their industry, but sometimes there's not a labor partner necessarily in their industry in the area. So they make that decision. The workers sign cards. It is card check neutrality, as Cynthia mentioned earlier, in our bylaws, kind of built into being a part of our network, is that there will be neutrality. That will not be anti-union activity. There will not be in any way trying to discourage work if that is what they want to do. We cannot require it, obviously, but that is something that is totally up to them. And so then once those cards are signed, we really long, extended voting process. As a lot of people know, at least within the US, that process is full of lots of issues. And so we've chosen to do card check neutrality, where they just take those union cards. It can be a third party that just double checks that, yes, the majority of the workers in this company are voting via these cards that they want to join the union. And then once that has been done, then they negotiate a contract. And it's a much more transparent, much more, we talked in the keynote about this us versus them type of mentality. So this is very different, right? It's about, it's not done on trust. And in this case, it is, right? We do open books. Everybody knows exactly what's going on in the company. And so it's not like, oh, you guys just don't want to give us any more money. It's like, no, what can the co-op do and still, play as much as they can, give as many benefits as they can, but still be strong. Okay. So, over this, then we're going to have time for Q&A. So essentially, this is kind of what we look at. So we have owners around the world within worker owners in that co-op, right? So they elect the board of the directors who's looking out for the long-term vision of the company. They oftentimes appoint that and who's looking at day, how are we going to get this done and execute? And then they also elect their union committee, who's going to be looking out for what is it like to work and be a worker in this business? What are the wages? What are the benefits? What are the working conditions? How do we work through the challenges that we have in conflict beings? And then, when there's big decisions, it comes back to everybody who is a worker owner. They make these really big decisions of like, are we going to be, starting a new, be acquiring something? Some of these really big decisions of kind of where their company is going, that goes back to the whole. And just in terms of the union committee day to day, what that looks like is a collective bargaining agreement, negotiated transparently, collaboratively. There's access to the benefits has been really important. Again, like I said, that defines space for working through conflict. And then we also encourage, our own, members of our co-ops to get involved with their local labor union. Again, this is supposed to be a two-way street, and we want to try to really be, as engaged as we can in the broader kind of movement of what's going on. So these are some resources. This will all be available. So I think with that, we're gonna stop and kind of answer any questions, go down kind of any area of this you guys are more interested in. But I'm gonna stop sharing here and just open it up. And let me see, I know we had a question in the chat, so let me find that real quick.
Yeah, I think Laura had a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Amahai. I haven't seen it yet. So
okay, yeah, I can read it. It's for Johnny. It said, "Can you tell us how was the process for unionized workers to start to use the language of business and management? How does it differ from the language of co-ops from unions?"
Yeah, that's a good question. I invite everyone else to jump in on it, because value is an interesting test case that I would say is not the model. So value, the arts workers there are quite political. And so they actually rejected the language of capitalism. We say we function in late capitalism. So value operates as essentially a collective model, a non-hierarchical model. And instead of a business, we refer to it as a social enterprise. We don't have profits within value. We have surplus, and that gets redistributed to the community. And so we took threads from both business, unions, and cooperatives, and really created a community-based social enterprise that functions as a business. So it's quite complicated. In the sewers co-op, our members there did not pick the same type of political structure. It does have a hierarchical structure where there's essentially production managers, financial managers within the co-op, so more traditionally business aligned, and so I think it varies based on the group of workers you're going to be working with. There are tons of different models for governance out there, but in many cases we are constrained by the legal structures and systems we operate within. So in British Columbia, we're required to have a board of directors for each cooperative, where the value board of directors operates pretty hands-off, and all major decisions other than personnel decisions or human resources decisions are made at the General Assembly monthly. As I further complicate this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, each of our co-ops kind of decides, how they want to term, like what they want their structure to be or whatnot. I think it's, so sometimes they someone's like a director versus like a CEO or whatnot. But I think it comes down to, in many ways, more about just like how it's operating in terms of how true engaged and involved, within our co-ops. We found that it's still important to have structure in the sense of having, somebody leading up a task or a department or, or whatever kind of piece. It's not every single decision all together, because it wouldn't be very efficient that way. But that they, are oftentimes, having delegating and having different people in charge of different things. But they still do, all of the ones we have here in Cincinnati do have some form of hierarchy there. It's not just structure. It's what they've found has worked for them.
This has me thinking too of building that shared future. Like we have a shared future, but like the process of acknowledging that and then like co-creating towards that, and I think that's a process. And so like like Ellen said earlier, like some members are members of the co-op and some are not yet. So having that union gives a way of like how we create this platform where everybody can be co-creating that shared future together. And so I think that it's a shift, you know what I mean, but I think it helps a lot.
So I think there was a question also about, do you have laws that promote co-ops in the US? How do you register your union co-ops? So yeah, so I said we have some laws that do help promote co-ops. There's some funding out there like for our through our UA or agricultural sector. Have something called the Main Street Employee Ownership Act, but doesn't have a lot of resources in it. So I say there are some, and on like a local kind of state, I would say more of a local like US. They're in different money development and into loan funds. So there's not really that. And in terms of registering union co-ops, there's a way to register. So since I've been keeping a list send that to us because there's not really been a place for that. Now you obviously have to, your co-op has to be registered in the place that it is as a business that you're building that business, but there's not official registration union co-ops as far as I know, at least in the US. I don't know if there's anything different in Canada. Okay. Are there any moves that you were of? That's definitely a Johnny question.
Sorry, I cut out there, so I didn't hear the question.
Are any Ontario-based union moves that you're aware of?
Oh, yeah. So unfortunately, no, there are not the number of unionized cooperatives in Canada that exist in the States. I think this is a relatively newer organizing initiative. So there's a great one out of Halifax called it's a coffee shop that was converted. The workers bought it out after they organized, called Glitter Bean Cafe. I do know the Ontario Co-op Association is quite interested in supporting the development of unionized cooperatives, but I'm not aware of any that exist on the ground there just yet.
So maybe whoever you are, you can get it started in that area, James. So I'm going to put a few more resources in the chat, but we've got about 2 minutes left. Is any questions we want to ask or any last thoughts any of our panelists want to mention? As it's just kind of a brief, obviously very co-ops. Oh, do we have 10 minutes?
Yeah, it's 30 minutes.
Oh,
it changed a little bit.
I got you. Okay. My mind, I had that we're done. So we've got more time. We've got 10 more minutes, which is like super exciting.
There's one in the Q&A too. Did you see that?
Is there? No, I didn't.
It's a little confusing. There's a Q&A tab.
Yes. Here we go. Okay. Here's another one. Any suggestions or tips for people wanting to start a union co-op movement from scratch in a rural setting? Ooh, that's a good one. Who wants to take that on? Co-op Dayton, you gonna send that one off? I know you're not really rural necessarily, but I feel you guys have done a really good job of starting a movement from scratch.
Is there a particular rural
Sure, you want to take that? Or
I was like, I'm gonna start with
okay.
what I've learned, and then I think you're good at the how we built this from scratch.
Okay.
So I think I would consider Dayton a little rural, at least Montgomery County. And so I think that when talking to certain groups, there's a lot of preconceived notions that there will be opposition to unions, but we actually haven't found that in a lot of areas. And so I think finding industries where there are ends, like where owners are having positive experiences with workers who are unionized, especially if you're interested in conversions. But like manufacturing is one where I know there's an overarching association where every year they're like, "Are you mad at the unions yet?" And every year the owners respond like, "No, that's like the least of our concerns." And I think we're finding ends in manufacturing with co-ops as a form of succession planning, even with the knowledge that we're a union co-op movement, because there hasn't actually been that tension. They've had experiences with workers who are unionized. And I'll kick it to Maha of how we built this from scratch.
Yeah, I think that was a great what you shared. You know, for me, I think like I don't know if you guys how much you're familiar with Highlander and the praxis spiral. So to me, I think like when it comes to like building trust and solidarity, you know, you kind of start by like hearing like what are some of the common, you know, experiences and needs that people have, and then like how we're building co-ops to kind of meet those needs, right? So we can build that solidarity economy and learning like how to bring our ideas to the ground, right, and to manifestation. And so to me, it's like when we're trying to figure out like what is the thing we're trying to create, is like what are things that we're commonly using, right? And then how that money is either staying inside the community or leaving the community, you know what I mean, as a way to figuring out like what kind of industries to create, right? So yeah, so to me, like a lot of it comes down to building trust and hearing what the common experiences are inside the community itself.
Is James from a union-friendly rural area? Are you speaking of? Because I look at Dayton as being more union-friendly because of the history, you know, the UAW and all that. And that could make a difference too. Like, you know, Amaha, you make great about building relationships and, you know, finding common ground and so forth. If you could also find that wherever if there is a history, maybe tapping into some of those individuals as well.
Yeah, and I think Amaha hit right on the head around, you really want to look at what are the needs in your community.
Yeah.
What is it that people, what's the why that's been really successful in some rural communities is like having a grocery store, right? That like a lot of these rural community grocery stores have disappeared or are closing down. And so like that has really think starting with the need, and then, you know, I think sometimes it can be challenging in rural places, like, is there labor partners there or not? You know, outside union, you can have that social council, that union committee. There could be an independent union that gets formed if need be. And again, you know, it's something that, you know, there's that union neutrality. So, you know, you can't force workers to form a union, but your values, that's what you're committed to in terms of not fighting against that, I think is like the really important piece, but also making sure that within your structure, that there is a way to make sure that only thinking with our business hats, but also with our labor, our worker hat. And so that is like the role of that committee, what that plays within inside. So I think there's many ways, even if you don't have a vibrant movement, accomplish goals and make sure that that is happening within your co-ops.
Yeah, I would just add on to this. I can't speak to the American context, but in Canada, the real heartland of the cooperative movement is in rural Canada and northern Canada, and our most successful cooperatives in Canada are some of the northern federated Inuit co-ops, which came together to essentially create grocery stores because no major company in the government was ignoring providing those services. So they banded together, and there's networks of grocery co-ops that have expanded into full service provision co-ops. And throughout the prairies and rural settings, bulk buying cooperatives came together both to purchase equipment and supplies for farming settings, but also to market goods. So I've done, as a union organizer, I've done a lot of organizing in rural British Columbia, and I find that folks who live in rural settings are often more open to the idea of cooperativism that's built into our rural fabric, right? You have to rely on your neighbors to be able to survive, especially the harsh winters in Canada. But the union conversation takes time because unions have not had a presence in a lot of rural communities, and in many cases have been seen as oppositional based on values or based on the economy. And so the way you get through that is by lots of one-on-one conversations. It's demystifying, it's building relationships, it's building trust. And even in our co-ops here in Vancouver, which is not rural at all, it took time. It took about 2 years to get some of these off the ground, because we needed to build trust both with the workers and with the broader communities.
Amazing example of like responding to a community need, right? Is our rural electric co-ops that electrified 70% of the United States, because there was no interest from the big companies, right, to send electricity to the rural areas. So I think, again, starting with what your needs are and how co-ops can really help to address those needs, and then really trying to build the foundation and the values around that. That's to get people. Johnny said people want those, right, and start to make these things happen. Any other thoughts that people want to share in terms of people thinking about getting started on something with this? We've got like 3 more minutes. I just put a link to, oh yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say, I just put a link to the Union Co-ops Council toolkit in the chat. So people know that that's there. There's a lot of good case studies and tools and stuff, so people can also take a look at that. Go ahead, Amaha.
So I guess I've come into this movement more as an organizer than a labor organizer. So I'm intersecting and I'm learning the past. I just want to kind of put that out there. So to me, I think one of the keys is how to build collective hope. And to me, collective hope is like how do we what is the community that we want to work, live, and play in, and how we leverage our resources to make it happen. So when I'm talking about building that shared future, I used to say shared future from divided past, but now I just say a shared future, because really, if we're interdependent by nature, then we have a shared future regardless. Are we going to be consciously working towards that shared future or not? But to me, I think it's like when it comes to like building movement or building, it's really identifying like what is that shared vision that is like emerging and bubbling from deep inside, and how to connect that together. So like when Ellen was talking about, what are the needs, and so I think it's like knowing like what are the needs, and also what are the gifts and talents in the community already, because I think like oftentimes that's like the missing element is that we're waiting for Superman instead of acknowledging, we got all these amazing skills, right? And so when we're not trying to compete, but we're trying to say like, how do we accentuate, and how do we actually build spaces of opportunity through our cooperation, right? That I think to me that like we can like really like harness the next level of capacity in community. And I think that's where unions come in, is like kind of being that like platform like holds, or can be like a container for all of those like learnings that come about, and how to the space to kind of hold it all together. If that makes any sense.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amaha. And I think that's a great way to end our session. Thank you all to our panelists today, and you guys for joining us. You're going to be in Cincinnati tomorrow. We have a whole 2.5-hour session on this. So if you want to dig in more, definitely join us there. And good luck to everybody. We hope you guys the best of luck, and hope to work with you all on building union co-ops around the world. So good stuff. And hopefully everybody sticks around. We've got our concluding experience starting in about 10 minutes. So there's 10 minutes of networking, and then that'll start. So thank you guys all so much.
Thank you.